So here's some news that kind of slipped under the radar, but I think it's pretty important. Brazil to join South Africa's ICJ genocide case against Israel. This came out last week. Now, following this development, Brazil now withdraws from IHRA shortly after country joined South Africa's genocide case against Israel. So the IHRA, we've spoken about quite often on this show. That's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Brazil has now withdrawn from that. Brazil has withdrawn from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, where it had served as an observer member since 2021. Israel's foreign ministry and Brazilian media announced last Thursday. Brazil's decision to join South Africa's legal offensive against Israel at the ICJ while withdrawing from the IHRA, is a demonstration of a profound moral failure, tweeted Israel's foreign ministry last week. At a time when Israel is fighting for its very existence, turning against the Jewish state and abandoning the global consensus against anti-Semitism is both reckless and shameful. While the Brazilian government has not officially confirmed the withdrawal from IHRA, the move has been confirmed by various anti-Israeli Brazilian groups. Brazilian paper Metropolis also claimed that the Israeli embassy in Brasilia has been informed. Sources from Brazil's foreign ministry told another paper, UOL, that one of the reasons for the withdrawal is the financial resources that are needed in order to remain with the alliance. So if the foreign ministry is confirming it, that means it's pretty much a go. The Organization of American States, which is an imperial arm of the United States, of course, Commissioner for Monitoring and Combating Anti-Semitism, Fernando Lautenberg. Well, with a name like Fernando Lautenberg, you almost have to be a Latin American anti-Semitism expert, said on X, the Brazilian government's decision is a mistake. Brazil has the second largest Jewish community in Latin America, and being integrated into the IHRA is a way to demonstrate commitment to a culture of peace, and to promoting education about the Holocaust and combating anti-Semitism. The IHRA definition of anti-Semitism represents an important tool that, although not legally binding, is adopted by over 45 countries and 2,000 institutions worldwide to inform, identify, and combat anti-Semitism. So for those of you who don't know,
and 1,999 of the chairs of those institutions had sex with a minor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. For those of you who don't know, we've covered the IHRA pretty extensively on this show, so I assume most of you do. It really equates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Two of the more draconian tenets of it are that it is considered anti-Semitic, according to the IHRA definition, to call Israel a racist state. And it is anti-Semitic, according to the IHRA definition, to compare the conduct of the Israeli government to that of the Nazis during World War II. And so basically what the IHRA definition exists to do is not to create a more peaceful world, but of course to create a legally binding framework that would allow for censorship of anti-Israel speech, not anti-Semitic speech. Especially at a time of rising hate cases, as has been recorded in Brazil, great care must be taken so that actions unrelated to diplomatic tensions do not affect the safety of the large Jewish community living in the country. Well, that's, of course, nonsense, because what the IHRA does is it equates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, which means that it governs your speech on international diplomatic tensions, right? I mean, that is what it exists to do. So the Combat Anti-Semitism movement here drafted this report, the IHRA working definition in the post-October 7th world. And Gen X Girl put this together and had a very good find here. So if you look at the LinkedIn profile, which is public, of course, on the right, Seema Vaknin-Gill, who now works with Combat Anti-Semitism movement, if you look at the bottom of that resume there, chief censor for the state of Israel. So she was the chief IDF censor. So these the people pushing this IHRA, almost all have ties to Israel or work with NGOs that are pro-Israel. It has nothing to do with combating anti-Semitism. It has everything to do with suppressing speech on behalf of Israel. Looks like Russell froze there. Unless I froze. Did I freeze? No, I'm here. Can people see me? Russell's camera went out. Am I visible on the screen?
Dude, all of a sudden the whole thing crashed.
Oh, your thing crashed. Okay, so here you got to exit. There we go. Okay. All right. You probably got to put your stuff in.
Yes. Yeah. Fortunately, it happened at the end of the show. I don't know what happened. It just crashed.
Yeah. No, that's weird.
Weird.
You have time. I thought it was me.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So Brazil has a total of 6 IHRA adoptions, including 4 out of its 26 states. 4 Brazilian states: Rio de Janeiro, Roraima, Sao Paulo, and Goiás. Don't come for me with the pronunciations there. The 4 Brazilian states that adopted the IHRA definition this year, meaning 2021, I assume, encompasses nearly 70 million people, or approximately 1/3 of the country. So, despite these positive steps, according to combat anti-Semitism, of course, anti-Semitism disguised as criticism of Israel persists in Brazil. The president of Brazil himself, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, recently made statements about Israel that almost certainly qualify as anti-Semitic per the IHRA definition. He asserted in February of this year, okay, so it was this year, that what is happening in the Gaza Strip with the Palestinian people hasn't happened at any other moment in history except when Hitler decided to kill the Jews. Lula did compare the behavior of Israel to that of the Nazis. And see, this is why this is important, because the IHRA definition is technically non-binding legally. Of course, what they use this for is to lobby governments to censor on behalf of Israel. And as we know, Brazil, unfortunately, is a censorious state. We did that segment on Jimmy's show about a stand-up comedian who's facing a possible 8-year prison sentence for making offensive jokes. And this is why censorship is so dangerous, because it can easily turn something more symbolic in nature and legally non-binding in nature into something quite dangerous. The Simon Wiesenthal Center Latin America said withdrawing Brazil from an international organization that seeks to preserve the memory of the Holocaust and combat anti-Semitism is not a measure against the state of Israel. It is contempt for Jews and will allow Lula to compare us to the Nazis without remorse. Again, he did not compare Jews to the Nazis, and compared the action of the Israeli state to the actions of Nazi Germany. And just to give you an idea, as the research suggests, everyone speaking out against this is some Israel-affiliated organization. So the Simon Wiesenthal Center, of course, rage tweeted at Jamal Bowman over his opposition to the Iron Dome. So you notice a pattern here. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the ADL, because as you can see, the ADL also getting their talking points from Netanyahu. So here is some of what we showed earlier in the live stream, not in this segment, about Israel's Eighth Front War, which is a war fought in the global public mind. So we're going to see a little bit of Netanyahu, and then we're going to see chair of the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, using almost identical language.
The guardian of Christianity in the Middle East is presented on American television by purchased influencers. It's presented as the enemy of Christianity. What folly, what lies, what a travesty of truth. So one of the things we have fought now,
And I was going to mention this before. This is something else we covered this past week. Israel is bringing hundreds of influencers to the country in order to propagandize them into speaking on Israel's behalf.
Right.
And he's talking about paid influencers.
Yep.
front war, we have an eighth front, and that is the front in the battle for truth.
Need to recognize that there is an eighth front in this war. It might not be a terrestrial border that you can find on a map, but this domain is as volatile, is as violent, and is as vital to our future. The information sphere, the infosphere, is the eighth front in this war. And seizing the high ground in the fight for global public opinion is a battle that's as important to the long-term war as what you've done in Lebanon and Syria.
Yes. Sounding just about exactly like Netanyahu there. Here is ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt talking about these new surveys that they do every so often with some troubling results regarding quote-unquote anti-Semitism.
Every 2 to 3 years, like a sentiment analysis to try to gauge how the majority population feels about Jewish people. So in this case, we do a domestic survey in the United States. And what I can tell you briefly is that we've been doing these surveys, I should say, since the 1960s. So we have a lot of information, a lot of longitudinal data. We're a very data-driven, evidence-based organization. And basically, in the last 5 years, intense, elevated anti-Semitic attitudes have more than doubled their share of the population. In 2019, it was 11% of the U.S. population had intense anti-Semitic attitudes. Today, in the last 5 years, it's gone from 11 to 24%. Now, globally, the numbers are even more stark. So when we did our first global survey of 100 plus countries in 2014, and we work with the market research firm Ipsos, based here in Paris, to do these surveys. In 2014, we found that 26% of adults worldwide had entrenched or extreme anti-Semitic attitudes. 26%. That's more than 1 billion people. We thought that was a lot. When we ran the survey last year, in 2024, that percentage went from 26% to 46%.
Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why that happened. Now, bear in mind, the ADL adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in 2016, which means when they talk about anti-Semitism, they are mostly talking, of course, about anti-Zionism. Here are some of the questions that they asked. What are your impressions of Palestine? 54% favorable. What are your impressions of Israel? Only 39% favorable. Again, that does not convey anti-Semitism. That conveys opposition to Israel. But the ADL uses the IHRA definition, so they make no distinction there. And even as far as this goes, they're not as anti-Israel as you might think listening to Jonathan Greenblatt. Should your country welcome tourists from Israel? 75% said yes. Is hate targeting Jews a serious problem in the world? 59% said yes, it is. Now, understand that. Is hate targeting Jews a serious problem in the world? Those who agree with that. You can disagree with that and not harbor ill will toward Jews. You could say, well, I don't think anti-Semitism is a huge problem worldwide. That doesn't mean you endorse anti-Semitism. It just means you don't see much of it and you don't think it's a destabilizing threat to Jews worldwide. I would probably answer, no, I don't think it's a huge problem worldwide. Should your country boycott Israeli products? Only 25% answered yes. Should your country have diplomatic relations with Israel? 71% said yes. So even on his terms, he's kind of misrepresenting the findings of this. Like, this doesn't convey any broad-based anti-Semitism or even any broad-based contempt for Israel, but it's too much for him to stomach, of course, because he makes a lot of money scaring Jews about anti-Semitism, right?
Yeah.
So back to the article. The Palestine Arab Federation of Brazil, however, celebrated the withdrawal from the IHRA, which it called an arm of Zionism created to hijack the memory of the Euro-Jewish Holocaust by the Nazis and instrumentalize it at the service of the colonial and genocidal project of Israel and Palestine. Bingo.
Well
that is
said.
100% what it is. So why is it that two Jewish guys here are reading the Palestine Arab Federation of Brazil's definition of the IHRA and saying, yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because that is exactly what it is. It's actually a disgrace to the memory of the Holocaust, the victims of the Holocaust, and their descendants. That's what this IHRA definition actually is. And I got to say, good for Brazil for withdrawing from it.
Yeah.
Even if this is only symbolic, it's a hugely important statement for a country of Brazil's standing in the world to make, which is that we are not going to be bullied into silence by bogus accusations of anti-Semitism based on bogus definitions of anti-Semitism. You are not going to use that to shut us up. We reject that. That is very important, and this is why we're saying Israel is losing this war long term, because hopefully, if and when this actually becomes formalized, which I suspect it will, if the foreign ministry is telling the press it's a go, then it's got to be a go, right? But this could set a very powerful precedent, which is that you don't have to be afraid of these smears anymore. Steve Bannon said people are not going to tolerate being smeared as anti-Semitic for opposing Israel. Steve Bannon's a very pro-Israel guy. It's common sense. The people are not going to take this. The people are not going to be silenced by these accusations when they are so transparently and obviously made in bad faith. So obviously, good on Brazil for joining the ICJ case, and good on them for doing this. I wish Brazil were not as censorious as they are.
Yeah,
now, listen,
that's the irony here.
That is an irony. Now, look, it's not my business. I don't live there. The only reason it stings a little bit is because we know a few friends of ours who are peers in the space who do live there. And since we are both sort of considering the expat life, it was on my list of places to go. And so kind of sucks that I don't really feel like it's accommodating enough to free speech. But hey, they don't owe me anything, right? They can run their society how they want. I don't have to love it. But that makes it all the more important that they are rejecting this, because the reasons we oppose censorship is because it is a slippery slope. And so a state that does censor speech, unfortunately, I think it's all the more important that they say, okay, well, we are not going to equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. That has legally binding repercussions in a place like Brazil, which will potentially lock you up for wrong speak, right? That makes these decisions all the more high stakes. So for all those reasons, I think it's pretty significant that they are rejecting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. This has to catch on worldwide, as we displayed in this segment. Thanks to Gen X Girls research, there is a coordinated effort by Friends of Israel to spread this definition as far and wide as possible, not because the definition itself is legally binding, but because, hey, you lean on a government that censors speech. Hey, as long as you're censoring speech, why don't you censor this speech, right? So it's very, very dangerous stuff, and good on Brazil for standing up to it.
Yeah, well, it's the meme that's going around every day. One day, everyone will have always been against this.
Right.
In the end, Israel cannot win this. Their crimes are so monstrous that the entire world is turning against them. And this is really only an issue, as we saw in a previous segment, in the Western world. It's really only an issue in the Western world. It's just North America, Europe. Nobody really supports the Israeli state. There was a recent poll worldwide. The majority of people worldwide believe that Israel is committing a genocide in country after country after country after country. It's only in these Western countries that you have this disconnect between the government and the people in this way. But you're seeing in Keir Starmer saying, well, it's a very mealy-mouthed thing, but it says a lot that in a country where, when I was there for the Assange thing, I filmed the projections they were doing on the side of Big Ben that were just free Palestine. And the prime minister, I forget his name now, Rishi Sunak, claimed that it was anti-Semitic.
Yeah, it wasn't even free Palestine. It was stop bombing Gaza, right? That was it.
Well, amongst others, there was
Right.
free Palestine. Yeah, they claimed it was anti-Semitic. The fact that now you have Keir Starmer saying they're going to recognize Palestine if there's no ceasefire by September, which there almost certainly won't be.
No.
So then what do you get? Because you already have France now saying they're going to recognize Palestine. You have Spain. You have Ireland. If England goes, who's going to hold out on recognizing? And at that point, you've got tremendous momentum. I know with the horrors that we're seeing, it's very difficult to see it this way. Israel is not going to be able to continue to exist as an apartheid state. It's just not. And, something that Americans should think about if they're crowing about Donald Trump's big European humiliate the leaders of Europe vacation. That's all well and good until your country stumbles and falls and needs help. People are going to remember this. We're not always going to be in this position. We're creating a situation where when the dollar crashes due to de-dollarization, we have a banking crisis. When America needs help, we've given the entire world every reason to tell us to go get your fucking shine box. And at that point, if Israel does still exist as what it is now, it's not going to exist very much longer.
No, of course. I mean, there are going to be dire economic and diplomatic consequences for this country as well. Obviously, we're already seeing it. We're already seeing like all this talk of tariffs. What? I mean, we don't really see fear struck into the hearts of these other countries. They'll figure something out. They'll figure something out. The world will figure something out. We are acting as if we carry a lot more weight than we do. And I think the Ukraine war was a big part of that. I think weaponizing the dollar against Russia was a part of that. And obviously, this genocide is a huge part of that. I don't think you can really minimize that. So, yes, I think for all those reasons, the momentum politically is on the anti-Israel side. And, the more countries just stand up and say, no, look, we're not going to be bullied in this way. Fuck you. That has a lot of impact. And a state like Brazil, as big as it is, that has a lot of impact. So good for them.
Please clap.